Hello everyone, welcome back to this series of home remedies for various musculoskeletal problems which we can deal at home. Myself, Dheeraj, a physical therapist, along with my friend Gabbar. That's a new name which I have given him because he is there most of the time helping me in explaining to you what has to be learned and how to help ourselves in various problems. So our best model, Gabbar, along with me, is going to be there with you in today's session. Today's session is going to be a next level. Now I think you all have started guessing what could be the probable joint next. We finished the ankle, finished the knee. If in case you have any doubts, any comments to be mentioned, do feel free to add up in the comment box and do like my videos because that is the only thing which is going to motivate me to do more for you. Right. So I'm really thankful for all the overwhelming response which you have given me, the love which you have shared in these days, especially with my videos which you are liking it a lot, and thank you for your response. So let's go to the next stage. Yes, the joint which you're going to discuss today is the joint which is going to be the hip joint. Now we spoke about the knee in relation to the burger, ankle we spoke about the ligaments which are very important for that. Now how can we understand the hip joint? Hip joint can be understood in a very different way. What is it? Assume an apple on a toothpick. You can? Yes. Start imagining that because lockdown period, restrictions, so I didn't want to go out and bring an apple and a toothpick, so I thought like my viewers are smart so they will understand it. So this joint is something like an apple standing on a toothpick. Because you can see how thin and slender the bones are, but on the contrary, how is the hip joint, how big it is. So whatever weight the femur or the thigh bone has to bear is on this particular junction which we call the hip joint. You can see the contact, the area which is there, which is very minimal. But we all also know that a huge amount of movement is possible in the hip joint. So let's understand the hip joint in today's session and see how we can do the required treatment for these problems in the coming classes. Okay. So to understand the hip joint, where I spoke about the apple on a toothpick, you can assume that how difficult it is going to be. But how has God made it easier? God has made it easier by connecting both the hip joints through the pelvis. Now this whole system is a single unit. I cannot divide or I cannot separate my left and right, because if I try to separate my left and right, then a lot of impact is going to be there on one of those joints. So in order to prevent that, we'll have to always see both the joints together. But when you talk about the individual structures, of course they have their individual responsibilities, but the responsibilities are also taken up by the opposite joint. For example, if in case there is something happening in this particular joint, this joint also plays a role in helping or preventing further injury to this particular part. So we'll be understanding those stuff in today's classes, and let me see how best I can explain to you. I'll try my best to keep it simple. If in case you have any doubts, do let me know in the comment box so that I can answer to your problem, right? So understanding the hip joint. The hip joint is concern of the hip bone or the thigh bone which you call, attached in a rounded circle which is going to be a part of the big huge pelvis part, or we call it the hip bone, we can call it pelvic bone, but the joint is the hip joint. Now you can see a very nice circular surface and a very rounded structure which is there, which is into the socket. Now that's why it is called the ball and socket joint. So when you talk about the ball and socket joint, the movement which is available at this particular joint is huge. We have 1 degree, 2 degrees, and of course this is going to be, it's a skeleton, so I will not be able to explain more. But we all know that we can do the front movements in the hip, we can do the side movements in the hip, we can do rotations, we can do cross, all different types of movements is possible in the hip joint. How is it possible? Because of this structure of the hip joint. It has got a socket which is big and a small ball, so the ball can move very nicely along the whole area. The movement is more, so that means the stability of the joint is compromised. If the stability is compromised, that means it is dependent on the structures around it for more safety and stability. So in that case, if there is again a small trivial injury, the joint can be injured. But because it has got a huge muscular support at this region, the hip joint is very less prone for injuries. But the injury, if in case it happens, it's very difficult to recover out of it. Because if in case all the structures around the hip joint is not taken into consideration, then there are likely chances that the healing will not be good. So let us understand the structures. So we have this bone, we have the hip joint, we have muscles in front, side and on the back which covers the whole hip joint. The most common muscle which you all know is the gluteal muscle which covers from the back. We have the front thigh muscles which cover the front. We have certain muscles which come from the spine and attaches to the hip. The point to be noted here, guys, a muscle which comes from the spine here and it crosses the whole region and comes and attaches to the hip bone. So we can imagine how much of problems we might be having if in case the hip joint is affected, because it can have a direct impact on your spine. So what I'm going to talk and what I'm going to explain, or what I'm going to try to explain, is like from here above, when you're going to talk, we'll have to really link each and every joint to the one above and below, or might be to multiple above joints, because we need to see that gubber is one. I cannot divide gubber into different parts. As I said in the previous classes, a problem with the ankle can cause problem in the knee, or a problem in the hip can cause problem in the ankle or the knee. Similarly, a problem in the hip can be because of the feet. We remember the feet being flat, foot flats. So if in case there is a foot flat, there are likely chances that the foot will go down, the knee will be twisted, knee twist will cause a rotation in the hip, rotation in the hip can cause problems here. So this is which you need to understand. So talking about the structures, we have seen that this is closely linked to this hip joint, hip bone, and the hip bone is closely linked to this bone or this piece of the spine which is called the sacrum, or which you call sitting bone. Now this tailbone or the sacrum, which you call them, is linked to the spine. So guys, we need to understand that any problem in the spine can have pain here, or a pain here can be leading to a problem here. So this close interrelationship between the spine, the pelvis and the hip joint is something which is going to be a crucial thing for us during our diagnosis part. So I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible even in these sessions, but for you guys to understand, I'll see if in case I'll try to make it more simpler as possible. So let us start with the front. The movement which we do in the front, which is called the hip movement, the front movement. This movement is brought about a muscle which attaches between these regions and a muscle which starts right from here, which I was talking about, the psoas major, which is going to be a part of the major muscle which helps in doing this movement. Right? Now when I need to go back, this movement, it is the gluteal muscles which does this movement. So if in case we need to work on this, we need to work on our glutes. If in case I need to do a side movement, then we have muscles which cover on the side, which is again going to be a part of the gluteus muscle. But there's one muscle which I was talking in my knee joint also, that it starts from here, it goes from the side and goes all the way down. Now a muscle which goes from here sideways all down here is one muscle which can cause problem also in the hip and also in the knee. So you need to check that muscle whether it is causing any problem at the hip or in the knee. Right? Now the quadriceps muscle, the muscle which helps in opening and closing, or especially in straightening the knee, is something which has its starting from here and also has its starting from the hip joint. So if that is joint, if that muscle is tight, it can cause problems for your knee. Getting complicated? No, it's not. Secondly, I have spoken about the hamstring muscle, that it has got its attachment at this point, that is, which is below the knee, but it also has its attachment from the hip joint. So if in case this muscle or this bone is not moving properly, or if it is stuck, then it could cause problems in your hamstring muscles. Apart from that, we also have muscles which are responsible for bringing the hip joint closer, and these muscles are from this region, which you call the pubic symphysis, the center point which we feel in front. So if these muscles are tight, you will not be able to open up your legs. The most common problem which our clients always say is that I am not able to squat, I am not able to cross leg and sit, I cannot stand for a long period of time, I need to keep on changing my weight from one side to another. So all these common problems which we are facing is basically because of the whole structure which is compromised in some other way. Now, since we see that there is a lot of complications, that there is a lot of complexity between these regions which we are going to work on, let's try to understand what structure can cause what. Now, in general, if in case we are talking, we have seen that these are the common problems, and the structures which are surrounding the hip joint are not those which are really weak. They are mostly all strong structures, and they can take up a lot of load and a lot of weight. If in case you see at the angle of your thigh bone, it's like this. It goes out and then goes in. So this angulation is being given because to give more support and more stability to the hip joint. If in case this would have been a straight line, then it would have been a story of the toothpick on the apple, or the apple on the toothpick. It's very difficult. So in order to increase that, God has given certain angulations, which is again going to be a part of physics or engineering, where the angles are being provided so that the stability is maintained and mobility is not compromised, because God is the best engineer. So we will be understanding more in further about the structures, its movements and the problems in the next video. Okay guys, see you later.